Good day, everyone, and welcome to the professors at McMurray University. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
I'm Don Frazier.
And we're delighted today to be joined by the distinguished Jerry Hollingsworth. Dr. Hollingsworth is a professor of sociology at McMurray University, and welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
And we brought you here for a myriad of reasons.
So many reasons, so little time.
Well, we could talk about child poverty, we could talk about serial killers,
Yep.
but today we're going to talk about Native Americans in the United States, which is one of your research interests.
My biggest one right now.
Your biggest one right now.
Yeah, you're cranking out tomes on this topic.
Yeah, we should have had some of your books here that we could show our listening audience.
I just dedicated one to the library, so it should
okay.
be out there somewhere. But.
Okay. Well, first, let's start. Why don't you tell us about yourself and where you came from, where you got educated, that sort of stuff.
Okay. Well, I probably got a little later start than most. I actually went to junior college for a year and ran track. It did really do very well and didn't care too much, and then wound up in the military.
Wait, you didn't care too much about track or
I
school?
cared a lot about track, but not too
much about the book stuff.
Going to class was one of those things. I actually had one of the professors tell us, I'm not your mother and father, so if you're an adult, if you don't want to come to class, don't come to class. I took that as literal, and
Took him up on it.
I had a good time that year
until your grades.
until my grades came in, and the coach said, "Sorry, I can't renew your scholarship anymore." So,
And where are you native to?
actually, I grew up in far west Texas. I graduated high school in Denver City.
Denver City.
Out on the plains, and my dad was an oil field worker, and we moved quite a bit from one little oil field town to the next. I've lived in La Mesa and Monahans and Kermit and all those little oil towns back in the day.
Out in the Petroplex.
In the Petroplex, sure. But graduated from Denver City and moved on from the military and went out to Odessa for a little while, worked out there.
You were in the Air Force, right?
Army.
Army.
U.S. Army.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
take license. So you're in the U.S. Army. What'd you do in the Army?
I was a military police officer. So,
Were you?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, got to do a lot of. Graduated from the Military Police Academy in Fort Gordon, Georgia, and
right outside of Augusta.
Yeah, outside of the good Gulf country.
Yeah, exactly.
After I got out of the military, I went to school at University of Texas at the Permian Basin.
Yep.
And and studied anthropology. So that was going to be my big calling, and really just kind of hung out there for a while and didn't graduate. I got offered a job in an oil field.
Seems to be a theme with you not graduating.
Yeah, probably at the time, when somebody says, "What do you want to do with anthropology?" and you don't really know, and the oil field is booming, and
there's plenty of bank to be made.
Yeah, and so they moved me out here to Abilene to take over pipe valves and fittings company as a general manager. So I did that and made a lot of money for a while, and oil field kind of went boom, and then it went bust out here. So I went to work and actually started my own computer company for a little while, and did that for a while. Then got the bug to go back and study anthropology, but discovered nobody had anthropology in Abilene anywhere. So
some schools don't even offer sociology anymore.
Yeah, apparently right. Heard about that. Yeah. But actually, around that time, just before the school year started, I met Dr. Wallace, and that's kind of where everything started, really, all over again. So I came back to school and I got my degree in sociology.
Here at McMurray.
We
need to emphasize that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
with a minor in history.
A minor in history. That's right.
Did you have?
I actually had him for American history. Yeah.
Wow.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
In fact, it was really funny because I sat on the very front row, and I was working midnight shift, and I'd come in. It was an 8 o'clock class. And probably fell asleep a couple of times.
In Frazier's class.
In his class, yeah. I don't know if he remembers that.
Imagine.
But it was only because I was really sleepy. But
I was lively.
I was always amazed at how he could lecture without any notes at all. And just pour that stuff out. So.
Look at that.
I just make it up.
But
it's not like they're going to check my footnotes.
And I don't ever remember any PowerPoints or anything like that either. So just rolled it on out.
It was before the day of PowerPoint, wasn't it?
So decided to go to grad school and actually got my master's degree in clinical social work and started doing social work for several years.
Now, was this local as well?
Yeah. Worked at Harmony Family Services as a senior VP for a good number of years. Wood Psychiatric, worked there for a good long time until they went out of business. And then I went to Harmony Family Services and worked my way up to senior VP.
Wow.
Left there and actually started adjuncting here at McMurray for a while in sociology for Dr. Wallace while I was getting my doctorate at Nova Southeastern in Florida. So got my PhD there, and there was an opening here for a visiting professor in criminology. So I applied, got it, and next thing you know, I was a full-time employee.
Wow.
That's how I wound up here.
And how many years ago?
16.
You've been here 16
This is my 16th year.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
Okay.
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah, and he was in my intro to American history class.
How old are you?
Yeah, I know, man. I'm feeling ancient.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out he was a non-traditional student.
I was, yeah.
I was worried about you,
Yeah.
not him.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. So,
It was.
why criminology? Is that what you wrote on for your dissertation, or some sort of?
No, actually, it was totally different.
Okay, what'd you write on?
I actually wrote a social problems or a social skills training program for adolescents who suffered from conduct disorders.
Oh, wow.
That's really how I got into the whole serial murder thing. So
I'm sorry. What was that connection? You were discussing children, studying children, and that led you to serial murders?
They're abusing their pets. They may be a future serial killer.
Actually, my specialty as a clinical social worker was conduct disordered children or behaviorally challenged kids who basically turn into criminals. So there's only about 34% chance that they're going to actually do anything other than go to jail. And so as I started...
Wait. Okay. Okay.
I love the way he just casually tosses that out.
Okay, there's only a 34% chance they're going to do anything besides going to jail?
Pretty much. Mm-hmm.
So that means...
In other words, they're budding criminals already. They've been juvenile delinquents for most of their life. They're either in a foster home care or psychiatric care or in juvie. And so that was... So
2/3 of them are going to go...
They're going to wind up...
To be criminals.
Yes. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's almost a detriment to our system. We're not helping them. There's so many different ways that they should be able to go.
Yeah, just get ahead of the problem instead of reacting to the problem.
Exactly.
Wow.
So you studied that for a while.
Mm-hmm, did that. Wrote a whole dissertation project on conduct disordered children, the causes, the etiology, and that sort of thing, and wrote a social skills program that actually helped them do that. And so I had a control group in a foster home that were just using behavioral modification and behavioral therapy. In my group, doing social skills training. So kind of comparing the two, which really got me into criminology, believe it or not.
And then you basically studied juveniles around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In Peru, Mexico, India,
Africa,
Ghana,
China.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Basically, that's the whole kind of sociological concept that I really got into, looking at social problems around the world with children. Because that really had been my specialty, is working with kids, mostly kids who were in trouble.
Yeah.
But
at-risk youth.
At-risk youth. And so looking at things like orphanages, street children, actually went to Mexico and actually lived with street children for a while.
Yeah.
Wrote a book about that. Went to Peru, did the same thing there. and then decided, well, kind of interesting to see, in Latin America, how that went. So decided to do the same thing in Africa. So actually wound up getting a job in 3 different orphanages in Africa, in Ghana.
While you're working at McMurray?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually did it for the whole summer.
Wow.
So just kind of basically moved to Ghana and lived there in a compound with a bunch of other workers from around the world, and wrote a book about child problems in sub-Saharan Africa. Child soldiers, met a few of those, worked with some of them. Talked about kids who were working in quarries, in mines, very underage kids. But mostly street kids.
We're going to have to stop you, unfortunately, because we're going to have to take a break.
Yeah, tons more to come right after this.
Holy
wow.
mackerel. We'll be back.
Don't skip! Don't skip! Don't skip!
Hello, my name is Christopher Bartlett. I'm the studio manager with the McWhinney History Education Group, and you may be used to seeing my name in the end credits, or sometimes you'll see me sitting here as a special guest host. But right now, I'm here to talk to you about an amazing new opportunity. We have created a Patreon. To put it simply, if you enjoy the content on this YouTube channel, then you can head on over to Patreon, donate money to us, and become a patron. And through your donations, more content will be made. Basically, it breaks down like this. With $10, you will receive a short thank you video from Dr. Frazier and Dr. Fabrizio. With $25, you will be able to take part in a patron-only poll. With $50, you will get swag. These items include a choice between 2 prints of paintings and signed copies of Dr. Frazier's books, Blood on the Bayou and Thunder Across the Swamp. With $75, you will receive exclusive videos that will not be available anywhere else, not on YouTube and not on SoundCloud. These videos will be just for you, the patrons. With $100, your name will appear in the credits. See that right there? That's where your name can be. Finally, for $500, we will send you a signed collector's edition of Phil Collins' book, The Alamo and Beyond. Yes, it is signed by Phil Collins himself. And remember, for all the higher donations you do, you also get the stuff from the lower ones as well. So it's pretty cool. And when we reach our goal of $5,000, Dr. Frazier and Dr. Fabrizio will give you their own personal ranking of the presidents, from worst to best. Coming from the perspective of a historian like Dr. Frazier and a political science expert like Dr. Fabrizio, you really don't want to miss their ranking and why they put them in that order. If you enjoy this content and want to see more, if you believe in our mission of making history accessible to everyone, then head on over to our Patreon and donate as much money as you're willing to give. You'll help us continue what we're doing, and you'll get amazing gifts as our way of saying thank you. Now we return to your regularly scheduled programming.
And we're back. You're watching or listening to The Professors from McMurray University. If you enjoy the content that you're viewing now or listening to now, support us with our Patreon page. This doesn't come free. We have student workers that help build this, and from time to time they like walking around money. So go to our Patreon and throw in with us and help us keep this content coming. If you'd rather not watch us on YouTube,
I don't know why you wouldn't want to watch us on YouTube.
You can always watch us or listen to us on SoundCloud or on Apple iTunes, and take us to work with you. We'd be happy to go in your commute. So anyhow, come to Patreon, help support our content, listen to us on SoundCloud, listen to us on Apple iTunes. All right. So we were talking about all this wonderful stuff that Jerry's done, Jerry Hollingsworth, our guest. But it made me think of that movie, Beast of No Nation. I mean, you were talking about quarry workers and child soldiers.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you were in the middle of in West Africa?
I was,
okay.
Yeah. Watching little kids pound rocks, and we make a lot of gravel in the U.S., but we have nice big machinery to do that with.
Gravel makers, yeah.
They don't. And they have little children that do that with big sledgehammers.
In which country is this again?
In Ghana.
In Ghana.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's probably, they do the same thing all through sub-Saharan Africa, but I was in Ghana watching them do that. And it's really pitiful to watch them sling, things around. Of course, their bodies are not fully developed and their muscular system is not fully developed. So it's very harmful.
Yeah.
Breathing that dust causes lung problems. And, the girls are actually brought in to do the same thing. And they act as sex servants for some of the mine owners and quarry operators. And it's pretty sad to see that.
That brought the room down.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Wow.
And did you go anyplace else to study children? You went to Mexico, Peru,
mm-hmm.
Ghana,
India,
China. And what did you study in India and China?
Well, in India, I bet you went to the Temple of Doom, right?
We went to
Indiana Jones' second movie.
Yes.
It's all child labor. I watched the movie. It's like a documentary.
He was my hero, by the way.
Yeah.
Hiram Bingham is his protege.
Huh.
In India, we actually stayed in an orphanage. We actually stayed in Aurangabad with a group there. And on the side, we actually taught in one of the private schools they had there. So that was an interesting experience.
Wow.
But working with the kids at the orphanage was really interesting. They were there for some pretty interesting reasons. Different reasons from, say, in Ghana, where a lot of the parents died from AIDS. They had a lot of AIDS orphans living in the orphanages or walking the streets. In India, a lot of them died from self-immolation. Their parents would die from setting themselves on fire because of the poverty, and they couldn't make a living. Mm-hmm. So they would actually kill themselves and they'd have their kids sent to an orphanage. So that was kind of crazy.
Why self-immolation? It seems like there's so many other ways to go.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. It was really quite common. I never could really wrap my head around that one either.
Wow.
But and in China, we actually did something totally different. We actually worked in immigration schools. For example, in China, the socialist system there and the communist system provides most of the people with a place to live. But and now they've kind of loosened up on that. You can actually leave those communist kind of housing areas and move. However, you forfeit a lot of your personal rights that you get, like free education, public education for children, all your medical benefits that you would get under their system, and you move to a larger city to go to work somewhere, and you can't go to school. You're not allowed. You're considered to be an illegal immigrant in your own country.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which is just amazing concept, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, that was pretty hard for me to wrap my mind around too. And the government doesn't like those immigration schools. They're not completely illegal, but they don't really like those to exist. So in some cases, they've actually run people off and then just bulldozed the whole school. But we've worked in one and worked with the kids. Really interesting kids, very bright. And their parents are doing better because they're finding jobs in the big cities like Nanjing and Beijing and some of the other cities that the immigration there's like 200 million people in China on the move, to out of rural areas and into the major cities. And the population explosion in the cities is just amazing.
Right.
Wow.
What city were you in China?
We were in Nanjing.
In Nanjing.
We started off in Nanjing and then went on to Beijing.
And where's Nanjing?
Nanjing is, it's actually closer to the south, I'm thinking. You might remember it, Don, the history guy.
Yeah, Rape of Nanking.
Yeah,
Nanking back in the old days.
Yeah, it used to be the capital of China until they moved it to Beijing.
Yeah.
But that we visited that site. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty grim.
It's really grim.
The book is horrendous.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, how do you keep your spirits up?
Yeah. Holy smokes.
I mean, you studied children in horrible conditions in the United States, and then you decided, let's go and study them around the world. How do you not get depressed?
Yeah. I think it probably comes from the days when I was actually doing therapy and doing clinical work. You know, you can't take that stuff home with you. You know, in the first few days I worked at a psychiatric center, you know, I did that. It's like, go home and tell my wife, oh, those poor kids, you know, and, you know, they need help. And, you know, you have to kind of depersonalize yourself from that. And
you can do that even when you're living in an orphanage.
Yeah, you know, you don't separate yourself so much from it, but you kind of have to back away from it, at least mentally. You know, you still feel the same kind of things for the kids, obviously.
Yeah.
But you do have to kind of separate yourself from all that anxiety.
So how did you transition from that to studying Native Americans?
It was really interesting. I was out on a run one day. I was actually fixing to go back to India for another trip. And I was out on a run one day and just decided, I'm going to study Indians. It's been a passion of mine since I was 8 years old. And I was at that point in my career where I kind of had that freedom to say, this is what I want to do. And this is where my heart's been all my life. And why am I not doing it?
Yeah.
You know? So I decided I'm gonna do it. Actually, somebody asked me one time, when are you going to study problems in America? And so that kind of hit me.
They were tired of you traveling all over the world.
Yeah, India's great, China's great, but have you been to the Pine Ridge Agency?
Oh, you hit it right on the head. You know, and I realized immediately that one of the most marginalized societies in our world is American Indian reservations. And so that's kind of where I've been for the last several years. And my first trip into South Dakota to the Pine Ridge Reservation was an eye-opener.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So, and since then,
So it was a passion of yours growing up.
Yes.
You know, we're all interested in things growing up. So it was a passion of yours. But then you never studied it.
Never did.
Until you got the point in your career where it's like, why don't I do what I really want to do?
Well, sort of. I did take 36 hours of anthropology at UTPB. Yeah. And so I was there then. But yeah, then after I moved and made the transition, it was like past history again. But yeah, at that point in my career, I decided I'm going to do it.
All right. On that note, we'll be right back.
History has become one of the most fought-over battlegrounds in terms of shifting people's views and opinions about their country. In response to this, we have decided to launch a website called Go To History that will become your home for clear-eyed history content. Our objective is to put history out there, free of agendas, and allow you, the viewers, to decide what you believe and decide how to interpret this information. With experienced professors such as Dr. Don Frazier and Dr. Stephen Hardin teaching courses and creating agenda-free content for students and just plain history enthusiasts, the content of Go To History is vastly informative and unbiased.
Hey history people, it's Phil Collins here. I am just giving a shout out to a couple of guys that you're going to be hearing from. And they're good friends of mine, but they're also incredibly knowledgeable historians. Dr. Donald Frazier and Dr. Stephen Hardin. Both great friends of mine, both helped me out with my book on the Alamo. And two guys, if you don't know much about history, these are the first two guys you should go to. Okay, what they don't know isn't worth knowing. Don Frazier, Steve Hardin, I hope you enjoy their presentations.
My name is Evan Williams, a history major at McMurray University, and I love the layout of the Go To website. I mean, it is singularly built from the ground up with user convenience in mind. Every study available is within a single courses tab, with each lesson having a single page for each of its individual videos, text, visuals, and quizzes, all at easy grasp. This is most definitely history made simple.
Please log on to www.gotohistory.com. This portion of the show is reserved for advertisements. If you are interested in filling this portion with ads for your business, please call 325-793-4686 or email director@tfhcc.com.
And we're back, and I'm Paul Fabrizio.
I'm Don Frazier, and we're joined by Jerry Hollingsworth, our colleague from over in the sociology department. One office over from you.
Yeah, way over in the sociology.
Right next door to.
By the way, what is sociology?
Sociology is the study of society, the structure of society, institutions, family, pretty much looking at anything societal.
So you don't look at an individual. That would be
more psychology. Yeah, we do have social psychology, which is kind of a mixture of the two. So you can really delve into the individual there.
But it's behavior of people in a group.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we're talking now about your transition from studying child poverty around the world to studying Native Americans, which was an early love of yours.
It was.
So what year is this transition taking place?
As an adult or well,
your trip to Pine Ridge was in,
I think 4 years ago.
Okay.
I think that's right. Time's passing so fast,
It
it's
does,
hard
it
to
moves.
keep up with it. But yeah, that was about 4 years ago, I think.
Okay, and you've written one book?
I've written one book on Native America, and I'm working on my next one. So,
okay, what's the name of the book that you've already written?
Native America in the 21st Century.
Okay,
that's the latest book.
Okay, so where have you been as part of your soak and poke method of research?
Soak and poke.
You ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
Oh, do they use that in sociology?
I never heard of it.
Oh,
actually.
in political science we do it. You go and you work with the politician. So you're one of their staff people.
Soaking it up.
Soak it in, and then you poke around and ask questions.
Okay.
Huh.
So that we call it
soak and poke. Yeah,
okay.
he's a soak and poker. Yeah. It's tough for me to do because all my people are dead.
Yeah.
I've been around already in the last at least 5 years, I'm guessing, because I went to Oklahoma several years ago, probably 4 years ago, and made waves with the Chickasaw and the 5 civilized tribes. But actually, it probably goes back even longer than that. Back in the early 90s, I went to the Navajo Reservation.
Okay.
So actually, that's probably where it all really started. But
got to avoid the skinwalkers out there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they still believe in those things too.
I had a couple of Navajos in my class that came from out there in the corners.
Okay, what are you talking about? Skinwalkers?
Yeah, they're doppelgangers or lycanthropes, one of the two.
Shapeshifters.
So I was told that if I ever go out there and stay in a hogan, to not look through the smoke hole because I might see a skinwalker looking through the hole, and then I'm doomed.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that I confronted when I was there. The first trip to the Navajo Reservation, we went there on a missionary trip basically, and the preacher that lived across the way from us, he was always encountering these guys because they didn't like Christianity.
Encountering skinwalkers?
Yeah, skinwalkers. Well, witches.
Yeah.
People planting things in his yard, casting spells on him. I don't know if you ever saw a skinwalker, but he was actually the first one that ever told me about a skinwalker. So,
oh, really?
So he was very well attuned to what they were and how they operated and all that. Besides Tony Hillerman.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing about the Navajos.
Okay, so you've been to the Navajos, you've been to Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Been up to Pine Ridge.
Yeah, actually, I actually took my wife on this trip, so she went with me to Pine Ridge, and we went up there, and that was my first look at Pine Ridge, and I thought I was in a third world country.
Isn't it supposed to be like the poorest place in the United States?
Shannon County is the poorest county in the States.
Shannon County, South Dakota.
Shannon County, South Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah. But I guess this past summer probably was the biggest summer I've had traveling around the states in Native America. Started off in Oklahoma, went into Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and then all the way back around through Wyoming, Montana, Utah, and Arizona and New Mexico.
Wow.
So
that's a big loop.
That was a pretty big loop. But yeah, went out to Fort Berthold, went to, that was one of the most interesting places I've been. The Mandan and the Hidatsa and the Arikara, amazingly, struck me with an interest that I wasn't anticipating. You can't help but get into the history of Lewis and Clark, with the Mandans and
so much great art generated by Catlin and other Mortimer and all those guys that are documenting those early tribes or early encounters anyway.
Yeah, I would love to know more about some of the things he did, but he was, he really documented it with some beautiful art.
Yeah, some gorgeous art.
Yeah, and painted some famous Indian chiefs of the Mandan
that became
would never have known.
Yeah, we would never even know who they were if they hadn't documented it through that art.
So, came back out through the Navajo Reservation and spent some time last year at San Carlos in Arizona, which was really interesting. The Crow Reservation
Where's that?
That's in Montana, right outside of Billings. I was really thrilled with that because I got to interview a Crow elder, which I sat and visited with him. I don't remember how many greats now, but probably great grandfather was buried at Custer's last stand, Custer's battlefield. Was
he a casualty?
He was a Crow scout
and got picked off in the fight. Okay.
Yeah. And I had gone.
I guess if you're buried, you're technically, probably a casualty. I just meant, did he die of old age and has to be buried up there?
No, he was actually.
I want to be very clear to our,
he was actually
audience.
Killed in the war. Yeah.
Where they buried the survivors. Yeah.
True.
Sorry.
And I'd been out there as a kid. I think I was 15. My dad took me out there, and it's so different now. They've added a Native American piece.
They have,
which I did not know. And that's where I ran into the Crow elder, and we talked for a couple of days. And he enlightened me as to the Tobacco Society and the secret societies that they had, and took me through the Crow Agency, which is got it right up there with Pine Ridge.
Really,
poverty, and it was terrible.
Drugs, alcoholism,
methamphetamines.
All right.
Yeah, methamphetamines have taken over the reservations. It's incredible.
Well, that'll wreck them.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, have you ever been down to the Kickapoo Reservation near Eagle Pass here in Texas?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
So you haven't explored the Texan?
Not as much Texas. Although El Paso has a reservation, and there's one in East Texas as well.
Alabama,
Yeah, Alabama. Yeah. So I haven't been to those. I find it interesting that we had a reservation just to the north of here.
Yeah, up in Throckmorton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a reservation near here?
Yeah.
Well, there was in the 1850s.
Oh,
1850s.
Very short-lived.
It was.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
they kept
that.
being blamed for a lot of things they didn't do.
Exactly. It was just they trumped up charges to push them on out.
Exactly.
What was the tribe?
Comanches.
Oh,
It's a Panoptec, Comanches.
Okay.
And part the Tonkawa, I guess, too.
Well, the Tonkawas and Caddos and Wichita's had their own reservation as well. But the Texans just approached it from the standpoint of, what are y'all still doing here?
Get out of here.
Yeah,
Go to
there's a
Oklahoma.
perfectly good place called Indian Territory on the other side of the Red River.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we putting reservations on the Brazos River? Makes no sense. So,
what is the goal of your research? What do you want to study?
Right now, I'm writing my next book on Native America called America's Third World Societies.
Yeah, that's the one I'm waiting for.
And so that's the presentation I'm going to be doing for E.E. Hall, probably this month. I'm actually wanting people to see what the reservations are like. We've given them all this land, and it's kind of it is a huge comparison between the research I'm doing is looking at the general population versus the general Native American population versus Native American reservations, and looking at the statistics on. I've looked at educational attainment, poverty statistics, unemployment figures, a lot of those social problems that exist, and finding out that the Native American reservations are as bad as things I saw when I was in Africa.
So they're poverty traps.
Poverty traps.
So if you leave the reservation, you'll do better.
You'll do better.
But when you leave the reservation, do you lose your culture?
You do in some cases. For example, the Navajo pretty much are saying, you're white now. So
if you're not on the res, you're white.
You're white, pretty much.
Is there real pressure then to stay in the poverty?
I actually had an interview with the vice president of the Navajo Nation, and he said just exactly that. And he said, if you leave the reservation, you're going to be in a racist environment, and if you stay on the reservation, you're doomed to a life of poverty. His words. And he says the only thing about that is they love where they're at. They love being there.
Love being in the reservation and society. All right, so we got about 20 seconds.
Wow, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot.
Well,
of
we're going to
unpack.
We're going to have to drill on this when we come back from the other side of this break. But,
this is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
America really is.
Third world countries. All right, we'll be right back after this.
Welcome to State House Press, a nonprofit publisher of quality books. State House Press and the McWhinney Foundation Press are part of the Texas A&M University Press Consortium, which handles retail distribution for several small but distinguished publishers. Our entire list of offerings, with pictures, summaries, prices, and easy online ordering, is available in our section of the consortium website. State House Press is proud of its reputation for high standards of scholarship and readability. In addition to this, we at State House Press have recruited the talents of individuals such as Phil Collins on his book, The Alamo and Beyond. We release not only texana by contemporary authors, but reprints of classic accounts of Texas life and history otherwise inaccessible to the public. Our book list also incorporates the publications of the McWhinney Foundation Press, specializing in the history of the Old South and the Civil War. We strive with our titles to make history accessible to as many readers as possible. To accomplish this task, we have recruited some of America's leading historians, as well as bright new scholars. We believe firmly in narrative history, in telling a good story, and in telling it well, without losing sight of the people who've made history and the events that changed a nation.
For questions or business inquiries, please visit the Texas Book Consortium at www.tamupress.com.
Bear Leader Tours. Where will Bear Leader Tours take you? Everywhere. Paris, Bruges, Trier, battlefields, Pearl Harbor, Pacific beaches, New Orleans. Join the adventure.
www.mcwhinney.org.
When you support McWhinney History Education Group, you also support the many young workers who operate and maintain the company's digital operations. These are dedicated university students who handle many things such as filming, recording, and editing content for McWhinney, as well as cultivate the layout and structure of McWhinney's various websites, including its associated channel on YouTube. We are a nonprofit organization that exists from donations from interested persons and history enthusiasts alike. Donations enable our students to obtain a higher education, job training, and career bolstering skills. If you would like to donate, please visit us at www.mcwhinney.org and click on our About Us tab to learn more.
And welcome back. You're listening to the professors from McMurray University.
In beautiful Abilene,
in
Texas.
beautiful and currently damp and cold Abilene, Texas. But if you would like to support our work here and bring more of these sorts of topics to the fore, and to also support our student workers that are actually producing and putting this on, go to our Patreon page and pledge whatever you can. We need the constant support from viewers just like you. If you don't want to watch us, you can always listen to us. And you can listen to us on SoundCloud or on Apple iTunes. Take us to work. We're a great company on your long commute. Right, we have with us today Jerry Hollingsworth, our colleague over in sociology, and he was talking about his work with Native Americans, but you've got a book coming out next. You're working on one now, right?
Correct.
And it's called
America's Third World Societies.
all right, America's Third World Societies. But where did you get that title?
I got it from John McCain.
Really, the recently departed
recently
John.
deceased John McCain. He actually attended a tribal government meeting with the Navajo several years back. And he basically said, I've been around the world and seen some crazy places, but the Navajo Reservation reminds me of a third world country. So that's basically where I got that.
Is there more poverty there than in Pine Ridge in South Dakota?
Pine Ridge is looking at about a 55% rate, poverty rate, with about a 30% relative poverty rate, which is or extreme poverty rate, which is a family of 4 living less than $12,000 of income a year.
Wow.
The Navajo Reservation is not quite that bad. You're looking at about 48% and about 20% of extreme poverty. So similar, but Pine Ridge is probably one of the worst.
When we think of reservations in the United States, are most of them poverty tracts?
I can only say about the ones on the plains and in the Southwest, which is where I've spent most of my time. Reservations vary. There's small ones, there's large ones. What I've noticed in my research are the larger the reservation, the more problems they have.
Really?
Yeah. And even with the casinos, which are supposed to bring them, millions and millions of dollars, in some places it's not. Pine Ridge, for example, if in a year's time, if every Lakota that live on the reservation received the money from that casino, in a year's time, they'd all receive 15 cents.
Really?
Yeah.
They're just not the cash cows everybody thought they
exactly. And in some places they are. The Cherokee, the Choctaw, Chickasaw.
Because you can get there from Dallas.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to South Dakota to gamble.
Exactly. It's 120 miles away from the nearest town.
Yeah.
And so who goes there? Nobody.
No oil underneath the...
There's no oil like at Fort Berthold.
They just got the worst land possible in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere. In fact, one of the things I wrote about in this last book was out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, well, that's it. We've kind of warehoused them out there in the middle of the great American West.
And it's kind of...
the Navajo is very difficult to reach.
It's in the middle of nowhere. I've never driven so many lonely roads in my life as Arizona, the Hopi Reservation, the Navajo Reservation. It's just miles and miles and miles of road and canyons and desert. I like it myself.
Well,
it's beautiful.
But the Navajo Nation, the Dene, are living where they did historically.
Exactly.
And the Hopi are too.
Yes.
Are the folks up at Pine Ridge, was that always Lakota country?
It was, except for the loss of the Black Hills.
Okay.
Obviously was a big blow to them. Mount Rushmore is there now, which is really seen by them as an insult.
Sure.
But for the most part, it is. They had the Great Sioux Reservation, which was, originally most of their homeland, including the Black Hills.
Yeah.
But then they came in and they broke it up into 5 different reservations. And so you got Standing Rock, where I was this summer. And then you've got the Cheyenne River, and you've got several other Pine Ridge, Rosebud.
And these are all different branches of the Lakota Nation.
Yeah, you got the Oglalas at Pine Ridge. And
now, do they get along like the Hunkpapa and the Oglalas? Do they hang out with each other?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. The Rosebud Reservation and Pine Ridge are, jointly together pretty much. There's, buttressed up together against each other. And then those are the Brule.
Yeah, Brule.
So pretty much they still get along pretty well.
How many reservations are there in this country? Do you know?
336, I believe.
How many tribes are there in this
over 500.
So there's some tribes that don't have reservations.
Yes. Yeah,
do they have communities?
Land trusts. Oklahoma, for example, don't really have any more reservations.
Yeah.
They're all land trusts. The Dawes Act kind of rectified that.
Yeah, took care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, they broke it up into like 160-acre farms.
That's what happened to my people. That's why I have a Cherokee card.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're probably on the Dawes rolls.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I can take you all the way back, unlike some political figures.
Yeah, I have a cousin that came in off, they're on the Dawes rolls.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, if you're not on the Dawes roll, then you can't get your card.
That's right. You got to have that.
I've got my card.
So,
Okay.
So
Okay, we've got 2 minutes and 22 seconds.
you're going to dodge that Elizabeth Warren question?
This is a different show. We'll do that on the radio version of this show.
Yeah.
What do you think our audience should know about Native Americans?
Yeah.
they're very marginalized. They're the other. Even in sociology, I've been bringing this to the point. I did this weekend and this past week at Florida in a conference where I had a critical approach to my book done. And that is, nobody really knows anything. You have the mascot controversy,
It's sort of a meh.
Yeah.
All right, so we dump the mascot and we move on.
Yeah, and you've got, this marginalized society that, again, is like out of sight, out of mind. So I would just like people to understand, that they're there, they're hurting, they have problems, and, need to do something. I don't know what, but something.
So you're identifying the problem, but you don't have the solution.
No
yet.
solutions for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been kind of defying solution, I think,
Yeah,
for some time.
And I guess, are we concerned about, are they assimilated?
Yeah.
Because all these things that we did in the early times, like the boarding schools, to educate them, was all meant to assimilate them.
Well, it's either assimilation or annihilation.
Exactly. And I don't know that we've assimilated them.
But is assimilation still a policy now that we have these reservations?
And is it a form of annihilation?
Yeah.
If you assimilate them and they quit being Comanche.
Pretty
But
much.
at the same time, the flip side is if they stay on the reservation,
Poverty trap.
yeah.
Yeah. So they have a choice to make, and some of them make it, some of them leave.
It's a terrible choice. I mean, terrible options.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you lose your identity,
You do lose your identity.
but you at least don't wake up in a ditch because of all the different pressures on you. Wow. All right. It's been great.
Oh boy, Jerry, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We will get you back and we'll talk about something more fun.
Like serial
Like serial
killers.
murder.
Yeah. This is the professor of fun. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. Class dismissed.